I think so many people get caught up in that. They go, well, who am I? I've never owned a business before. I'm not special. I don't have an MBA. It doesn't matter. You don't need that. You need to be willing to do it. The best teacher is going to be experienced. It sounds cliche, but it's true. There's a reason why people say that, because you can watch all the YouTube videos, take all the college courses you want about owning a business. It means fuck all until you actually own the business, until you actually sign the lease, until you actually raise the money, spend the funds, hire people, open up. It means nothing until you actually do it. Welcome to the Zero Quit Podcast, where I bring you candid conversations with elite athletes, entrepreneurs, specialists, and other creatives. I'm your host, Covington, and through these dialogues, you will hear powerful stories and practical advice that will help you live a more active and intentional life. If you enjoy the show, be sure to subscribe and share it with a friend. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Zero Quit Podcast, and today we're digging into a very crucial, important piece of my past, of my identity, of my experience, and that is owning a gym, building it up from scratch, from nothing to something, owning it, and also selling it 2 years later. Because I think a lot of you may not even realize I did this, that I owned a gym, that I owned a business. So I think this will be very valuable to kind of share with my listeners, share with anybody who's met me in the past year, because I sold it pretty recently. We're actually coming up on about a year. I think the time I'm recording this, it's about 11 months from the time we signed a contract to sell the gym to the new owner. So it's still really fresh. But I think at this point, it's a good time to kind of look and think about, what I learned and share that with you guys. So let's get into it. Which, for reference, I didn't even specify what gym this is. This is Iron Built Gym. I'm wearing actually one of our shirts right now. Iron Built Gym. If you look at the Instagram now, it's a bit different, and the gym is a bit different than when we sold it, and certainly from when we started. So keep that in mind. Basically, anything prior to July 2022 is going to be all us and our doing. But there's been a lot of good changes, I think, that have come on, and a lot of plans that the new owner has and so forth. But anyway, for reference, Iron Built Gym. So like I mentioned, I want to give a preamble to the 3 lessons that I'll share with a little bit later in this podcast and talk about owning the gym in the first place, where to come about. So like any young teenager falling in love with the gym, they think to themselves, man, I'd love to open my own gym one day, right? How cool would that be? My own members coming in. I get to, make money off what I love, do what I love every day, open the door in the morning first thing, scrub the floors, buy the machines I want, the equipment I want, right? So like a lot of people, we have that vision, and not in a pride way, but I actually did it. I actually took the steps to do it. It wasn't just, oh, that would be cool and hope it happens down the line. I actually took the steps, saved the money, and did it. Now, the advantage was being I was young, and I had the chance because I wasn't already tied into a profession and so forth. But regardless of the fact, with any business owner understands this, there's no perfect time. And the biggest thing, well, I'll get into this a little bit later, but you don't always know what you're doing. And so 18 years old, I really kind of started saving for this gym. And I spent about 2 years saving for the gym. I worked 2 to 3 different jobs, a lot of hours. I'm still very frugal, and I kind of live with what I kind of think of like a broke mentality, where, regardless of how much money I make, even though it's increased over the years, I still have this spending behaviors of someone who makes, very minimal amount. And that allowed me to save a lot of money, because that's a question a lot of people ask, is how did you finance the gym? How did you get the money? It wasn't family loans. It wasn't any gift money. I was gifted nothing as far as money and things like that. I got a ton of help from family, but as far as money, it was all saved on my end. And like I said, I worked multiple jobs. In high school, I actually worked a job so that I could pay off my car. So I basically paid that off right around the time I graduated high school. So fortunately, all this extra money I was making from my jobs was able to go into savings for this gym. Fast forward a little bit. So that kind of describes a little bit of the financing side of things. Fast forward into the actual part where we're actually thinking about opening it. So I really plan to save for like 3 to 5 years before trying to explore this option. But as you guys know, this thing called the pandemic happened in 2020, and it kind of forced our hands in a little bit of ways. Gyms were closing, and it allowed me to be like, well, damn, I need to buy some equipment. So that the pandemic happening actually triggered me to buy a barbell, a squat stand from Rogue, a few plates, a few kettlebells, So it kind of gave me like a taste for actually going for it. And I still wasn't thinking about owning a gym at this time, but I was like, okay, well, I'm going to probably need this stuff later. So in my mind, it was like a small investment towards the eventual gym I would open up. A little bit into the pandemic, maybe 6 months or so, gyms are finally starting to open up. But Maddie and I, my wife, who opened it with me, I talked to her and I was like, man, why don't we just like do it now? Like, this is a good time. At this point, I was already planning on dropping out of college. I was basically 3 semesters in, and I was making enough money from video editing as a freelance videographer, video editor for real estate agents, and so forth. That was growing into a much more consistent, strong source of income. My degree was relatively pointless. I could ramble on college for most people in another podcast. But at this point, I was already planning on dropping out. The pandemic happened, which made everything virtual anyway, and so I wasn't really doing any college work. And so I was like, man, well, if I'm going to drop out, why don't we look and see if we can do this gym thing? So, I looked at my finances and I was like, well, I don't have as much saved as I would like to start the gym, but let's just put some teasers out there, start looking at properties, and see what we can do. So here's where things get a lot harder, and there's a lot of failures and disappointments and frustration, stress. Every emotion that's negative, this is where that starts to kick in. Was trying to find a lease, trying to find a landlord that would give you a chance, find the right property, all of that. So we're in Richmond, Virginia for reference. We're looking at different properties. We know we kind of want a warehouse somewhere between like 4,000 to 8,000 square feet. AC isn't required, but we'd prefer it. We do obviously need bathrooms. We'd like, 1 or 2 office spaces so that we could have an office for ourselves, for personal trainers. I had a friend of mine that owned a supplement company, Austin. I actually have a podcast with him that was hoping to kind of sublease in our gym as well, benefit him, benefit us, and so forth. And it was difficult to find some of these properties, a few did pop up, and so the first one we toured, we actually fell in love with. It had a bunch of office space. It was a pretty new building. It was very nice, large, kind of back area for like concrete paved area that we could put on events and do tire flips and just kind of everything out there. We're like, man, this is it. First property, we were toured, we're excited. And we get denied. And, I call the guy and I'm like, hey, like, I thought things were going good. Like, why was the landlord not interested and so forth? And, nobody wanted to take a chance on a 20-year-old who's trying to open up a gym during a pandemic, right? You're trying to open up a business that is dependent upon people in a fairly crowded space, and you're 20 years old. You don't have any business experience. You haven't opened this before. And so we got turned down there. We got to look at a few other properties. They were either out of our price range, or we got turned down again. I remember there was actually I think the 4th property we looked at, we were pretty convinced we were gonna do it. It was a good price, but honestly, looking back, like a bad location. It needed a lot more renovation, and but the agent that was working for the landlord. He made it seem like, oh, like as long as we want it, like we can get this property. So we get all excited. We're like, we're just waiting on the lease now. And I get a call or an email, I don't remember what it was. And the multiple basically landlords that own that kind of shopping center section, they were no longer interested. They didn't want to take a risk on a gym. So failure after failure. We're like 4 months into looking at properties at this point for reference. We actually picked up some equipment preemptively, thinking we were going to get the first property, which stupid, but also not too stupid. That way you have equipment already purchased and you can kind of move it in. So it wasn't like we bought everything. We just bought a good bit, a little bit early. We saw some deals and so forth. Anyway, but eventually we stumbled upon this 5th property. And we actually had our own agent helping us look for properties at this point, which is convenient for reference. Typically for a residential property or commercial property as a buyer, you don't pay the buyer's agent's fee. So the seller actually pays for that. So essentially you can get someone to help you find a property, sign a contract, or for free. So for reference, use a buyer's agent. That'll help you a lot. Especially if you don't have experience with this stuff. But found a property. It was a little bit higher in a price range, and had a little bit, honestly, more space than we needed, but it was a great location. I talked to my wife and I was like, hey, let's just check it out. Let's see what it's like. We tour it. We love it. We want to tear down some walls. Come to find out, that's just going to be extremely expensive and not worth it. So we kind of leave how it's structured originally inside the building and work around it later on. But like I said, the price was too high. So we actually got lucky because they hadn't had a tenant for like 6-7 months. It was pandemic time. They were looking for some income to come in from a tenant, and we were looking for a property. And fortunately, we ended up signing the lease there. Extremely stoked. You finally get this sense of relief, like, oh, we're actually doing this. This is the big step. And we get the rate down a little bit lower. We signed a longer lease, so the negotiation was basically sign a longer lease but pay a cheaper month to month rate. That would of course increase year to year, but it was worth it. We just needed to get our foot in the door basically. So got that, and here's where things get a little bit interesting, right? Is you're 20 years old, the business hasn't even run or made any money yet, it hasn't opened, and you signed a lease that is well over six figures in total money you owe over the 5-year lease, that you're on the hook for. So there's a lot of nerves with that, and with any business, whether it's a loan, whether it's a lease, you have to roll the dice. There's no guarantees with owning a business. There's no guarantees with a lot of things that have a lot of reward and value in them. And there's no other way around it. What am I going to, have some out clause or this or that? I mean, look, there's smarter ways to do things. I only put this out front and state it in that way because it's an important thing to consider if you are looking to own a business, own a gym, own whatever. You're going to sign things and do things that are scary to you. You might take out a $40,000 loan and you haven't made a dime yet on your product. It's very nerve-wracking. But one, it's a necessary step you have to take. And two, you have to believe not only in your product or service, but also believe in yourself that you're going to make it happen. Back against the wall, business is struggling. You're going to find a way to pay that monthly rent. You're going to find a way to pay that loan back. It takes a bit of faith, is all I'll say. And sometimes the faith is not always justified. It's not always rational, but it does take a sense of confidence, sometimes delusion, as a business owner. So I felt like mentioning that. As far as a couple more things before I get to these specific lessons, is the renovation process. So we probably put maybe, I think I have to look at it again. I think we put like $10,000 to $15,000 into renovating the place, which included paint, turf. We got these strips to kind of clean out or edge the turf so it looked neater. What else did we do? Obviously hung up some security cameras. We built a front desk. We had to strip the flooring. So actually, if you looked at the original property and all this, I have a whole YouTube channel for reference, or YouTube series on my YouTube channel that shows all the renovation, a lot of the process of opening this. But the way a lot of the floors were in the building was they were tiled, kind of like a regular office tile that you would see, like gray office tiles, and then carpeted, and then there was some concrete. So what we had to do is rip up the concrete and rip up the tile. Problem with that is it's all heavily adhesive underneath. So not only did we have to take like a heavy duty metal shovel and break up all the tile and get it up, we had to do all of that. The tile's really heavy. We had to get rid of all the tile, trash that. We didn't have a dumpster at the time, so leveraging an apartment dumpster that Maddie and I were staying at, just boxes and boxes of beat up tile that we ripped up. Carpet, same deal, taking that to a dump, to a landfill. And the problem with all of that is there's still this heavy, thick adhesive glue underneath. So we had to get some chemicals solution basically from Home Depot, pour that over so that the glue would even come up, and then scrape the glue up. Then resand the floor. We had to rent a sander from Home Depot, resand the floor. That was a bit of hell. And then we can, paint over it and use the concrete. We did end up matting the other room as well, so that's part of the renovation costs. I think it was 55 6x4 rubber stall mats, horse stall mats. So, there's a lot of things in renovation that you don't really think about with pricing that come up that I can't even remember in this exact moment. But a lot of silly stuff, a lot of supplies where it's like, oh, it's just $9 or just $14, but those things add up pretty quickly. So something to consider there. Equipment wise too, we started pretty minimal with equipment if you look at what we had opening day. But there's a lot of things that you kind of forget that cost money. For example, just storage for holding kettlebells or storage for holding cable attachments, right? That's like another $400 or $500 just to hold equipment. It doesn't actually do anything. It's not usable. So little things like that, chew into your budget. But with a gym, with any business, honestly, you got to start pretty lean. So we had just 6 barbells, basically enough for every rack, every bench. We didn't start off with too much specialized equipment. We had just 2 regular squat racks, a squat stand, 2 benches. Later on, we upgraded to combo racks and got nicer barbells and more barbells and specialty bars. And, we started, of course, we got a set of 5 300-pound dumbbells, but we got more benches down the line. We got a ton more machines, really nice machines down the line, leverage different credit card opportunities with that so that we were not really taking that alone, but leveraging the 0% APR over 18 months and so forth. I could get all to that or all into that or answer questions with that on another podcast. If you guys have questions, let me know. I can do a little follow-up Q&A. But started pretty lean, got what we needed, got the basic necessities, got, a machine for each body part, and, you grow from there. You get what you need to start, and you go from there. So yeah, over the next 2 years that we owned the gym, a little bit less than that, about like a year and a half before we really sold it, from opening to actually selling it. We had basically 3 months of renovation before we opened. Made a ton of upgrades, swapped out deadlift platforms, repainted the hallway in the front, the opening area. Gosh, we did a lot. We renovated some other stuff out in the gym. Like I said, we got a bunch of combo racks. We got like another 8,000 pounds of calibrated plates for powerlifters. A lot of things that cost a lot of money, but it was great. Community, people. God, again, there's like just so much to go through. I'd have to write down a lot of notes to hit on everything. But all that to say, I think we're like almost 20 minutes into this podcast. So let me now get to the 3 lessons. If you skip through to the time codes, all good as well. But lesson 1, the biggest lesson I learned owning a gym, owning a business, is to delegate as early as possible. That was just the biggest mistake I made. And it's something I do better now, but it's still hard, to be honest. And what I mean is, hiring people, trusting other people around you to do certain jobs or tasks for you and so forth, because I made the mistake of taking everything on myself. Like I mentioned earlier, my wife opened it with me, and she worked plenty of hours and she helped a ton, but she was also finishing up her college degree. She was doing this internship coincidentally at another gym so she could finish her degree, as that's what it required. And I was basically our only employee. So I was doing everything from signing people up to doing social media to cleaning bathrooms to fixing holes in the wall to buying equipment to moving this to doing that, restocking the fridge, administrational stuff, everything basically. And my wife still helped a ton, and my family and friends helped a ton with renovating and building it up, and even a number of things while we were owning the gym. But I took on too much. And even though we financially could have hired people, we didn't. And that was the biggest mistake, was not delegating, not hiring people. And I think that the biggest thing as an entrepreneur, and I feel like, I don't know what the types are, but I feel like a type A person potentially, if this is accurate, I'm the type of person where, I don't trust someone else to do as good of a job as I'm going to do it. Or not even as good of a job, but they're going to do it the way that I would do it. And so that's something as a business owner, you have to let go. I have to say, hey, if I hire so-and-so to sign people up, they're not going to give the exact same spiel that I'm going to give, or they're not going to maybe sell it the exact same way I'm going to sell it. But I have to trust that they're going to do, a good job overall. I'm going to have to trust that they're going to get better. I'm going to have to trust them to do that job, to do that position that I'm paying them for. And it sounds obvious, but it's hard. It's hard to let someone else, promote your baby. It's your gym, it's your baby, and trying to hand any of that off to someone else is really hard to do, and to trust that they're going to treat it with the same love and care that you do. And to be honest, they're not. They're not going to love it the same way you do. They didn't, build it from the ground up. They didn't save all the money for years to open it. They didn't take all the risk. So they're not going to love it and cherish it the same way you do. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that they're not still going to do a good job. And over time, you need to position yourself as an owner into a creative position. You need to spend less time doing the administrative work, less time doing the, very simple, monotonous task. You as an owner need to position yourself to where you were thinking 3, 5, 10 years ahead. You were thinking about the big picture. You were thinking about the next steps for the company. You're in that creative space. Everything else you need to delegate, get off your plate, because otherwise you're going to lose your mind. So that was one thing I had to learn pretty early on, was to delegate early and often. And even now, though I don't own like a business that needs employees, still delegating different things, delegating who is shooting my content for Instagram, delegating potentially who edits this podcast. There's some things where, okay, maybe you want to save the money and do it yourself, but other things, hey, if you pay someone $200 to do this, then that gives you and frees you up the time to go and do something else, or to maximize your business in a different way. So it's something to consider if you are a business owner, or just anybody. I think can apply that in some shape or form, right? Lesson 2 would be planning ahead. Now, I obviously planned ahead. I obviously planned for certain things. I knew what the next equipment I wanted to get was. I knew what we wanted to do with the business. We planned out like little campaigns or events and so forth. I wasn't not planning, but I mean planning ahead far into the picture. I mean, as you're already knocking out or taking steps towards, something happening in 6 months, you need to already be taking steps and thinking about what's happening in 2 years, in 3 years, and 4 years. I see other gyms or other business owners do this on a higher level than what we were doing. And I think this ties back to lesson 1. If I had more time to be creative and just think and plan, I think I would have been able to do this better. But always thinking, what can we one up? How can we level up this experience? Okay, maybe we don't want to break down the walls in this building, but maybe we can redo the floors. Maybe we can redo the lighting in the bathroom to really make that pop more. So more people are taking pictures of of themselves flexing or in this business, promoting it on Instagram. We get more members, more attention, and so forth. Just really planning ahead, I don't know, just planning not just 2, 3, 4 steps ahead, but way in the future, always thinking, how can we level this up? How can we do that differently? Thinking about how other industries do certain things, like, hey, the coffee industry does this. I wonder if we could kind of twist it and implement it into the fitness industry. So that's what I mean by planning ahead. I just wish I had thought a little bit more into the future about certain things. And, I just think it would have paid off in that way. So that's just one thing I think about. And lesson number 3 is you don't need to know what you're doing. You just need to be willing to take the risk and learn from the mistakes. I did not have a clue how to own a business, own a gym, run any of that. I had no experience. I was coming out of high school. But I was willing to say, fuck it, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way. And if my back's against the wall, I'm just going to claw myself off that wall and figure it out and learn from my mistakes. Because I think so many people get caught up in that. They go, well, who am I? I've never owned a business before. I'm not special. I don't have an MBA. It doesn't matter. You don't need that. You need to be willing to do it. The best teacher is going to be experienced. It sounds cliche, but it's true. There's a reason why people say that, because you can watch all the YouTube videos, take all the college courses you want about owning a business. It means fuck all until you actually own the business, until you actually sign the lease, until you actually raise the money, spend the funds, hire people, open up. It means nothing until you actually do it, okay? And so don't let the idea that you've never done it before, or you don't know what you're doing about every little step, stop you from actually going for it. Now, you do want to know certain things. You do want to know how you're going to spend the money. Have a business plan. have these ideas. Why, test your product out in the world, out in the wild. Have a minimum viable product and see if this is actually going to work. Don't just be stupid out there. But I had no clue how to sign a lease with a business. I had no clue about uh, what do you call it? Like credit card transaction services, merchant systems, and all these different things. But you don't have to. You don't have to know every little thing. One, you can ask people, and most people are willing to help you and assist you. And two, you're going to learn by doing it, and then you'll know in the future. And three, if you make a mistake, as long as it's not a super expensive one, it's okay. It's okay if you buy the wrong thing. We bought the wrong AED. We bought it like a 600. First of all, AEDs are stupid expensive, but we bought like a $600-700 one. Then come to find out, the Virginia's like regulation requires a different model. So we had to like return that and get another one, but it worked out. It worked out. The point is you're not going to do everything perfectly accurate. Even I don't care what courses you take, who you talk to, you got a great mentor, you're probably still going to screw things up and make mistakes, and that's okay, but you have to do it. So many people just talk about creating LLCs and they love putting entrepreneur in their Instagram bio. And, of course you're the CEO. You're the only person in the business and you haven't sold anything. You haven't built anything yet. It means nothing. Just putting those words in your bio means nothing. So instead of doing that, actually be the person who's going to start the business, who's going to run a business, who's going to grow a business or service or whatever it is. Actually be the person to do and not just talk about it. Creating the LLC, coming up with the name, all that's fun. What's a lot more fun? Actually owning and running a successful business. So all that to say, lesson 3, you don't need to know what you're doing. You just need to be willing to go for it, to do it, and be willing to learn from mistakes. Be okay with getting punched around a little bit, okay? You're going to get plenty of kicks in the nuts and mistakes and banana peels you're going to slip on. It's okay. It's okay. You got to be able to roll with the punches. That's part of owning a business, okay? Failure is going to happen. There's plenty of people that their business fails, like legit fails, flunks out, bankruptcy, whatever. They come back and do it again years later, and it's more successful in that, and they make good on all the mistakes they made and the regrets they had, and it works out. But that's business, it's persistency. In one word, business is persistency. So all of that to say, is probably my longest solo podcast, but I think it's worth rambling on because it was a very invaluable experience in my life, an experience that I couldn't put a price tag on, is owning a business, handling that many members and people, as much as I wish I would have delegated, handling all that myself, and the relationships built, the lessons learned, the mistakes, and all the nitty and gritty, boring stuff behind the scenes. I wouldn't replace it for the world. I posted a reel on my Instagram. I have it pinned on my profile. That was a little bit of like a throwback of when we were renovating, and then the last video tour I did of the gym. And when I edited it, I was like, okay, this is great, blah blah. The first time I played it back, I cried so hard. And it's, I was telling my wife, I don't even know what the emotions were. I think it was pride of, I really did this. I really did it. I really took the risk, spent the money, saved it, went for it, and built this successful business and sold it. So it was pride in that way. It was also gratitude, thankfulness of people supporting the business, thankful for my wife, thankful for my family, my friends that helped build it up, thankful for all the members that bought shirts and paid for memberships and supported us in a million different ways and told people about us and put stickers on their car and all of that. So much gratitude. It was a little bit of like bittersweet sorrow, as much as I'm glad we sold it and I needed to kind of move on to this next chapter of my life in Colorado, it was sad, It's like it was my baby. I put so much time into it. Some of my favorite memories, my best times with people, best friendships, and good and bad times were in those gym walls. So it was just a lot of emotions, but I sat there and cried hard for like 5 minutes straight, just sobbing, watching that reel that I just made. And yeah, so it's it's an important part of my life. If you guys have any questions at all, I'd love to do like a Q&A and answer some of that. Owning a gym is a difficult industry and difficult business, but it can be fulfilling. There's just a lot to it. There's a lot to it. So, anywho, hopefully you guys can get something out of this long-winded ramble. I think those three lessons apply certainly to any kind of business owner, content creator, entrepreneur of any kind. Um, but just I think parent life, or, I think they can you can apply them in multiple areas, in multiple facets. So, anywho, hopefully you guys get something out of this. If you did, please share the podcast. I love hearing that you're listening to it. I love when you guys share it. It really goes a long way. I try and provide good conversations with people I'm thoroughly interested in hearing their story. I got some good ones coming up very, very soon. So make sure you subscribe to the show. Follow me on Instagram, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.